From Sport Chek's flagship location at West Edmonton Mall, it's the panel. Tom Gazzola, Bob Stauffer, and Jack Michaels with you to discuss another week of Oilers hockey. Gentlemen, the Oilers are playing all right. They've got victories in 3 of their last 4 games. Could have had another one against the Maple Leafs. Tough situation there for Chris Russell, and they get no points, but they bounce back with a 7-5 win over the Calgary Flames. That wasn't an easy win, and it seemed like it was going to be an easy win, but in the third period, Laurent Brossoit admitted he was playing the score and not the opponent. And what does that say to you, Staff?
Well, first of all, winning isn't easy. Even when the team was winning games last year, they worked for it and they earned it. Grant Fuhrer tweeted after the game, he didn't give up the one that mattered the most. That's typical Grant. That's who Grant would be, coming in the support of a teammate. I'll give Laurent credit. I mean, he battled hard against the Maple Leafs, gave up a bad second goal to Dominic Moore, but he stayed in the fight and gave his team a puncher's chance to work their way back into it. And then against Calgary, he's got to be better in the third period there. So it's a very interesting situation because we don't really know how long Cam Talbot's out for, and Laurent's been given an opportunity here. So to be honest with you, I at this stage of the game, I don't have an answer yet other than to say that at no point has Laurent locked it down, but he has shown some flashes of being pretty good.
The other thing we don't know, though, is whether or not Nick Ellis could be another Cam Talbot, undrafted player, grounded out in college, finally got a chance his last year at Providence and lit it up and was spectacular for the Friars and really carried them into the NCAA tournament after a national championship the year before where he backed up Calgary prospect John Gillies. I'd be curious to see Nick Ellis play, especially when you consider his numbers in the American Hockey League. He's backed up his success at Providence with a couple of good years in the American League where he's produced a save percentage of better than .915. And I think I'm not the only one who's curious to see. I would not be surprised at all if Nick Ellis gets a start here for the Edmonton Oilers within the next week. Of course, they've got a back-to-back coming up on the weekend with the Montreal Canadiens and the Toronto Maple Leafs. He'll get his shot, and I think it'll be, I'm not trying to put the cart before the horse, but no one knew who Cam Talbot was until he got his shot in relief of an injured Henrik Lundqvist. I think Nick Ellis might be thinking the same thing.
All right, so the injury bug has started to hit the Oilers. The flu has hit the Oilers over the last 2 weeks. Adam Larsson's out. Of course, Cam Talbot, as we mentioned, is out as well. Now we see Brandon Davidson return to the fold. Nathan Walker comes in. Eero Pakarinen sent down. What do we make of these moves?
I think one thing is there's another guy that has an opportunity to really see some playing time, and that's Brandon Davidson. And I don't think Brandon Davidson arrives in Edmonton conceding anything. I think he feels like he can push his way into the top 6. It wasn't too long ago, about 18 months ago, that Brandon Davidson was basically a top 4 defenseman for the Edmonton Oilers with no end in sight. We've sat on this panel. I'd love to dial it up. Producers will love me for this, but I'd love to dial it up when we were talking about Brandon Davidson getting 21, 22 minutes of playing time and being a guy that the Oilers were going to have on their back end for years to come. Then he gets hurt. And it all changed for Brandon Davidson. And that's the only reason it changed for Brandon Davidson. It wasn't suspect play where he just sort of drifted out of the lineup. That's not what it was. He's got a second leash on life in Edmonton. He's glad to be back. He's excited to be back. And I don't think he's thinking when Andre Secker comes back and when Adam Larsson comes back that he's necessarily going to be out of the lineup.
What happened with him in Montreal, Bob?
I'd like to tell you I know, but I don't.
They have the same history with him.
Yeah,
they didn't know what he brought to the table. Edmonton does.
And they picked up Jordy Ben at the deadline as well.
Yeah, that to me was one of the variables that kind of changed the complexion a bit for Davidson. Victor Mete had a good start to the season, puck-moving defenseman that played in the OHL last year. In both cases, both Nathan Walker and Brandon Davidson, I think they're going to get a real opportunity here. I mean, I think Brandon, especially in the short term, and I think that he's, in my opinion, and I respect what Johanna Vitu has done, and Eric Graba had a strong performance down in Calgary, and he can kill penalties and provide some physicality. But I think that Davidson has a better all-around package than both players, and that's why I actually see Davidson as being a guy who could push ahead of both guys. In terms of Walker, the Oilers needed more speed up front. Now they've got more speed with the emergence of Puljujärvi here over the last couple games, and Jujhar Khaira, that's a different dimension. But now Walker gives them some more as well. So I think that Todd McClellan's got more pieces to work with here maybe than he had about a month and a half ago.
Okay, he goes into a game with some options in his lineup as the Flyers come into town, a team that just snapped a 10-game losing streak. against the Calgary Flames, Flames team that we saw last weekend. What do the Oilers have to do to be successful against Philly, who will obviously be trying to build off of this win? And then the Oilers go into a tough weekend, and then if you want to look as far as Columbus, I mean, these could be 3 to 4 really tough games for the Oilers.
Well, they're all against Eastern Conference opposition. As Bob mentioned, the Oilers have 1 win all year at home against an Eastern Conference team. So really, when you consider what Edmonton's got on the table here, the Oilers are trying to put themselves in position to get into position. They've got to take care of business against the Eastern Conference
Which they haven't been able to do all season.
Right.
Yeah.
But after that, it's a slew of Pacific Division and Western Conference opponents. They're going to be through the meat of their Eastern Conference schedule. They've got to find a way to at least go 2-2, if not 3-1.
Do they also have to dictate the play? Something that they've struggled to do.
But let's not forget, when they went into Philadelphia, they didn't have Leon Draisaitl that game. One of the things that's changed here is Edmonton's got 3 centers down the middle. That's changed, and obviously, as Jack mentioned, Puljujärvi, Kara playing on that 4th line. I actually think he can play higher up at some stage. We'll see if at what point Walker gets deployed. Don't know if that's going to happen against the Flyers, but that to me is a winnable game. And their defense, you got to get after their D. It's a smaller defense. You got to force them, and you got to play the game in their end. And what we've seen recently is the Oilers have been better. Final 2 periods against Toronto, first 2 periods against Calgary. Edmonton did dictate the pace and the flow of those games and looked pretty good in doing so.
All right, we'll see if they'll be able to do it against the Philadelphia Flyers, who come into town Wednesday night. Jack and Bob, as always, have the call for you in 6:30. Chet, I got you covered right here on EdmontonOilers.com.